Adrian Jacobs presented the opening plenary session at the Canadian National Gathering in May 2023. Jacobs is of the Turtle Clan, Cayuga Nation, of the Six Nations Haudenosaunee Confederacy at Grand River Territory, Ontario. He lives on the Dish with One Spoon territory as the CRC's senior leader for Indigenous Justice and Reconciliation. We launch into the start of Adrian's talk with his reference to his copy of the two-row wampum treaty belt.
The vision of this two-row is throughout this whole meeting together. The idea that that we can have good relationships with each other. That's what this is all about. And in your program, I have a little descriptor of what this is all about. And I just want to say that people always, not always, but most of the time, screw up my title. And I just want to, it means something to me, so I'm going to straighten it out here. I'm the senior leader for Indigenous Justice and Reconciliation. People sometimes want to jump right to reconciliation. No, there's a stop before you get there that's called justice. And it's not something that, you know, Jonathan's already put a shot across the bow. And we'll just continue that. And I'm of the conviction that we did establish a good relationship in the beginning. And Henry Hudson was hired by the Dutch East India Company, and they were looking for a Northwest Passage to Asia. They were trying to get past us. That's a familiar story. They're trying to get past the Indians. So let's forget about the Indians. Let's set them aside. Let's go over somewhere else because, you know, there's something else we're looking for. And so he came up, and in the 1600s, he came to our territory, and he came up the Hudson River. And so they named it after him, of course. And then a few years later, 1613, other Dutch folk came. And in the early 1600s, the Dutch were the world power of colonial economic expansion all over the world. A small country that had a worldwide influence. And they did it by banking. They did it by borrowing money on the promise of returning with valuable stuff so that they could pay off their loans and pay off their crew and get supplies for the next journey. And they were good at it. And I think you're still good at it. And so they came up to our territory, 1613, and they started cutting down trees and started building buildings, and we came upon them. The Mohawk, the Haudenosaunee, came among them and said, "What's going on here? What are you doing? What are you doing cutting down trees in our territory?" And they were building houses, etc. And they said, or storage places, I'm not exactly sure. And we found out from them that they wanted to establish a trading relationship. They said, "We've got some stuff that you probably don't have, and we'll trade it for you for things that we think that we can sell back in Europe." And so it took a while for us to figure all of this out because they were speaking Dutch, old Dutch. And we were Haudenosaunee, all of our nations, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and later on the Tuscarora. We are all of the same language family. And so it took a while for us to figure out what you were doing and what you wanted. And then we talked among ourselves, and among our people, the clan mothers And the women's circle had powerful influence on our leaders. In fact, they chose leaders that were to be the voice of the people. The Europeans they kept looking for kings. Who's the king here? We want to talk to him. We want to, sign a deal. We want to make a deal. I hate that term, make a deal. Make a deal. We want to make a deal with a king, the top guy. And we talked about it, and we said, well, hang on here. We already know how to make arrangements, covenants, treaties among our people. We've done it forever. We know how to do this. So we came up and we listened to them, and our people spoke back. And we come up with this wampum belt. No wampum belt yet. I saw it earlier, so I know you've got it. But this belt represents the common river of life. It would literally be the Hudson River. And one purple line, mine is faded blue, but the original beads, tubular beads, were made from the quahog shell, an ocean shellfish. And we made beads out of the purple and the white part of that shell. And we put them together in belts and symbols, and then we put into the symbols our understanding of what this was all about. So these are our records. This is our sacred knowledge encoded, and then the stories are remembered by wampum keepers. And so they've kept this wampum from the beginning, and they said, we noticed that you came up in your ship, your sailing ship, your Dutch sailing ship. In it were your people, your language, your leaders, your technology, your way of life, etc. We have been traveling the same river of life in our canoe, in our technology, with our language, with our ways, our ideas. And we said, we travel this life together, and they described it this way, that this river goes off into the future. This will guide us into the future. So there's a dynamic nature to this. If you ever read the colonial records of treaties, don't believe them, because they do not convey what we meant. This isn't a static thing from 1613. It's irrelevant today. It's old. This is a living thing. And we still bring it to bear whenever we get into tussles with you folk. And we seem to do that every now and again. And so we said there are going to be 3 rows between the 2 vessels. And they will describe the relationships between us. The first row will be the desire for friendship and peace. We desire we were looking for friends, not trading partners. We didn't want, we didn't want that. We wanted friends. We wanted a relationship. We'd made relationships, covenant relationships with others before you ever came for 1,000 years. We want to continue that tradition. You're new folk here. We'll make an agreement like that. The second row is the idea that at the heart of peace is respect. You can't have peace if you don't have respect. Because when you're fully respected, you can relax. You don't have to guard your heart. You don't have to, judge everybody and keep them at bay, and you can relax and be yourself. Whatever you are like. Some of you are funny. Some not so much. But we want to know you. Not some picture or image, not some idol, some, ossified thing. We want to know you. When I would come home to my parents' home, I would describe it this way: I melted into the couch. Because I did not have to guard my heart there. Nobody was going to hurt me. Nobody was going to criticize me and say things that were bad about me. My parents loved me. My dad was a traditional Handsome Lake faith keeper, non-Christian religion. My mother was Anglican. But in our home, we had no yelling, we had no fighting, we had no arguing. They loved and took care of us. I knew that they were different. I knew enough as a little kid, without anybody explaining it to me. I knew that my mother's faith was different than my dad's faith. But in our home, we had peace. And after I learned this and I thought about it for a long time, I came to the conclusion that my parents lived this and raised me in it. And I bring that to my understanding of Christian life and experience. Now, after we made this with folks, we noticed that the Dutch tended to forget. We had to remind you. Oh, by the way, and we've been doing that for 410 years now. I'm doing it right now. By the way, this is what we said way back when. And then some people say, well, that's 400 years ago. What does that mean? What does that matter? Well, if you read your Bible, there's a story of Gibeonites making a covenant with Israel. And 500 years later, Saul broke the covenant. And during David's reign, there was a famine for 3 years and everybody was suffering. The whole nation, all 12 nations were suffering a famine. So David went before God and said, what's going on? And what God said, Saul broke the covenant made 500 years before. And that's why you're suffering right now. I am telling you right now that some of the suffering that's going on right now in this place, in this world, is because of broken covenants. This is not just one shot across the bow. I'm going to keep on going tonight. So we said, we never said, oh, those Dutch people, let's just get rid of them. Because we then, when the British came along and they became the power, we made the same agreement with them. And then after the American Revolution, we did it with the Americans. And we still remind Canada today. 2006, when they had negotiations over the conflict in Caledonia, Ontario, they brought out this belt again. And we said, we also brought out the silver covenant chain. There is another belt. I couldn't get it, before I came. But when I get home, I'm going to get it and I'll be able to use it in settings like this. So this is what we said. At first, we said, our vessels are traveling down the river and we're side by side, non-interference. But if you need help, we'll help one another. So at first they said, let's tie our vessels together with a rope, if somebody is suffering over there, we'll come across and help you out. If we're suffering, you can come across and help us. Then we noticed that you used iron chains with your anchors. So we said, let's make it out of iron chains. That means a stronger relationship so that people could go back and forth to help one another. And then eventually we said, because we kept The Americans kept forgetting, the British kept forgetting, everybody kept forgetting. So we said, let's make this chain between us out of 3 links. And I like to think it's these same ones. Only we'll make it out of silver, because silver tarnishes and becomes black. But if you polish silver, it becomes like a mirror. You can see yourself again. And we said, that's what we'll just polish the silver of the covenant chain with you again, reminding you of the original agreement. So I'm here to polish the silver covenant chain with you again. Now, I've worked all across North America. I've visited indigenous places around the world. I am Haudenosaunee, the folks that made this belt. And when I thought about this, and then the situation came up for me to consider working with the CRC, when I thought about it, I thought about Bert, who I've known since the 90s. I was in his house when his little daughter would do little signs in the bathroom saying, "Quit smoking. Smoking kills. I don't want you to die, Daddy." And I knew Mike next here in Ottawa, Center for Public Dialogue. We held Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, had an Aboriginal Ministries Council. I knew Mike. And then 12 or 13 years ago, I come to know Harold Roche and Michelle Neviadomi and Kim, Harold's daughter. So I got to know the Edmonton Native Healing Center. And I understood that Bert was working. I visited him there in Regina. And then about, almost 11 years ago, I met Michelle, what was her last name? Visser, and Rinkerwink or something. Yeah. I'm messing up all your names because that's what you did with us too. When we told you, my name's Gunosano, Goyogohono, then you said, wow, I can't, you're Jacobs. So I don't mind messing up everybody's language, even Barry's language. But anyways, we said we want to renew this. We want to shine it up again. And so when I thought about that, I thought about this long-term relationship that I've had with lots of people in the CRC, including John Postma near Fisherville, I think. There was Martin Dam, I think it was, from York CRC during the Caledonia situation. And I thought, these folks have been working for the CRC for a long time. There's something that's keeping them there. Something good must be happening there. And I said, I can hook up to that. Now, every time we come and we do stuff like that, we are forgiving you for all the broken promises that you've made over and over and over and over and over. I'd say over and over till you all left. And I probably didn't cover them all. But I'm coming here to say, I'm here to polish the chain. I'm here to be a part of doing something different because my ancestors thought this was a good idea. I have not come across a better idea, and I'm here to remind you that that's what it was in the beginning, and I am here to be a part of that. My one Mohawk elder, Grafton Antone, just passed away, and so I went to his funeral visitation on Tuesday, and I really miss him. But there's another Oneida elder still living, Bob Antone, who said that the Turo conveys relational consciousness. It's all about relationship. Now, in Canada, like I said, justice comes before reconciliation. In the academic, indigenous academic world and activist world, the word reconciliation is a bad word now. Because colonialism is continuing, the oppression is continuing, the injustice is continuing, the prisons are filling up, the child welfare system is not being corrected, educational outcomes are not changing. So a lot of the people say reconciliation, no, that's that's window dressing. I even did a tweet one time and I expressed it. I said, wreck, W-R-E-C-K, con, as in conning somebody, tricking them, silly, S-I-L-L-Y, A-E-H, a good Canadian touch to it all, and then shun, S-H-U-N. And that's people that know our history and that are well educated in all of this. They're just, don't talk to me about reconciliation. But I'm here to tell you that actually, with the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, we did establish this kind of relationship. And for a while, it did work. And it was a good thing. And I'm here to say we were very different 410 years ago. We look different. We smell different. We bathed every day in the rivers, you know. You were on a ship for a long time. We spoke very different languages. We dressed differently. We lived in different ways. We were educated in different systems. Today, we all speak English. We all go to Tip Top Tailors and whatever place you go to. We go to the same places. We do the same kind of things. We go to your schools. Surely if they could do that 410 years ago when we were really different, it should be a piece of cake now. And I'm here to tell you that we can do it if you're ready. Because we've been ready for 410 years. I said when my elders first told us about this, we said this is our best idea. And 410 years later, I don't know of a better one. You know, sometimes people look at this and you know what I see? I see Jesus in this. I see the ministry of reconciliation. I see it in here. The gospel came to you when you came to us. Maybe you didn't hear it. Maybe you were so blind of your own cultural ways. There is something called cultural blindness. You are blind to the things that came to you. You were not like Abraham when he met this Canaanite king named Melchizedek, who spoke in the Canaanite language and had a Canaanite name for God, El Elyon. And Abram recognized his own God, YHWH, as the same as El Elyon. And he recognized that. I think that maybe that was missed. Rick Hill talked about this being, you know, there's in one boat there's shipness. In the other boat there's canoeness. And what we've learned as our people, because it didn't stay in this respectful way. You got into our ship, pushed us out of the way, and took over our ships, took over our lands, took over our traditional systems, inserted your colonial systems into our communities. That happened at Six Nations in 1924. The traditional elders had set things up. And today, if what they set up in the first place would be held today, we'd still have those million acres in southern Ontario. We'd have trillions of dollars in our bank account. Our trust funds, we would have the best and finest health system. You'd be coming to us to get well. But our money was stolen, our land was taken, and this covenant was violated. And what Rick talked about is now in our communities, your shipness is in our communities. We're thinking like the colonial system. We're thinking in ways that weren't us. Now, I think my shipness or my canoeness is good for you and your shipness. That's my opinion. That's why I'm here. I think we're medicine for you. We're corrective. We're helpful for you. And I've been doing my best in my own faith walk to get shipness out of my Christian faith and have more canoeness in my Christian faith. I believe that I, as Haudenosaunee, Turtle Clan, Cayuga, or Goyungahono, I am able to live my Christian faith as who I am, as Haudenosaunee. It may sound different than yours. Maybe that's not the sound in your church, but maybe some of that is good for you. It might look different. It might smell different than what you're used to. But maybe it's helpful for you. I know it works well for me. I'm happy with my canoeness, my Haudenosaunee canoeness. You know, Richard Twist, I came across his notes to the inaugural meeting of the World Communion of Christian Reformed Churches in Grand Rapids in 2010. And I think about Harold and the works he's done, and Bert and the work he's done, and Mike and the work he's done, and Michelle and the work she's done, and Shannon and the work she's done, and all of the other voices that have been advocating for, this justice for Indigenous people. And I think about one of my best friends, Richard Twist, who passed away in 2013, who spoke to you back then. And he talked about the possibilities that we could have had. But instead of that, we got genocide. Instead of this, we got Indian residential schools and the horrors that occurred there. Instead of this. And I read his stuff, and I was broken up inside. And I said, I'm not just a new kid on the block with a new message. I am in a long line of people going back to 410 years ago. And I've been saying the same things that my ancestors have been saying. Pete Scazzaro talked about the idea that he's a healthy church leadership guy. And he says, Jesus may be in your heart, but grandpa is in your bones. Good, bad, and ugly, grandpa can be in your bones. And I think about myself and what I'm here to do, not just in this meeting. I'm here to do this in my life and in this Kairos moment for Canada. I'm here to say that it could have been different. Let's make it that way. Martin Luther King talked about the beloved community. The Bible talks about the great multitude of every tribe and people and nation and language and tongue being gathered together. The Navajo have that beauty way understanding, and other people understood this idea of a community of friends. And so we're here. I'm here with my ancestors. I'm here with our Haudenosaunee peacemaker in my bones. This was about at least 500 years after our Haudenosaunee peacemaker came, who is our Melchizedek. I learned that my grandfather was Wendat. The Haudenosaunee peacemaker was Huron or Wendat. And so the peacemaker is in my bones. My Haudenosaunee ancestors that made this covenant are in my bones. And your Dutch or European, British, American, whatever, grandmother is in your bones. We're not alone. We are together in this. We can do it. We could do something that has not been done the way it should have been done. And it's all about this, remembering. You know, the Christian Reformed Church has already made commitments. 1987, there was a covenant, a new covenant that was signed by the General Executive Secretary of the Council for Christian Reformed Churches in Canada, and also the Director of Canadian Ministries. Commitment to Indigenous people and self-government. And Richard said about this community, it's a remarkable community expressed through radical diversity. Your uniqueness did not die 410 years ago. We never let it die. We never asked you to give it up. We never said assimilate to us. We said you be you, we'll be us. Radical community. And then after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there was a commitment made on March the 30th, 2015, that the Christian Reformed Church would be a part of this idea of reconciliation. And the big mountain that Murray Sinclair talked about, and journeying up that mountain. And so I'm just here to remind you. I didn't say that. You said that. I remember stuff you don't remember. On January 1st, I came across a post. It's by Don Brandt, who's from Six Nations. And here's the post this year. Nuya, a history. There are many theories of the origins of Nuya, and this is one. The early 1600s saw a trade relation evolve between the Haudenosaunee and Dutch settlers new to the New World. Every winter, Haudenosaunee witnessed a Dutch holiday called New Year, I guess. Again, I'm messing the Dutch up. During which they ceremonied for the turnover of their calendar cycle. It wasn't our calendar cycle. It wasn't our New Year. January 1st is not our New Year. Our New Year is late January, early February, depending on when Pleiades constellation is directly overhead at sunrise. And then we count some days from that. That's our New Year. So January 1st wasn't our New Year. So this wasn't our tradition. We borrowed it from you. Traditionally, the first person awake on the morning of New Year's Day would serve ale and round, deep fried donuts called oliebollen. That sometimes had raisins and sugar dusted on them to other members of the house in their beds. The young Dutch children would then run from house to house in hopes of being the first person at your doorstep in the new year, as this was considered extremely lucky, and were rewarded with oliebollen, coins, and fruits. This had to be completed before the strike of noon, as visitors after noon, deadline, were laughed at as unlucky fools. After years of witnessing the celebration, Haudenosaunee children began to take part in the door-to-door celebration with their Dutch neighbors. New Year, according to your language, a New Year to us, or No Ya. Others say Hoya, New Year, is a New Year celebration custom Haudenosaunee observed in that early 1600s. 400 years later, in some of our communities, we carry a tradition that was part of the two-row relationship we had with the first Europeans we came into contact with. I asked my cousin, because she makes the best Indian donuts. And we have the argument like they have out west about bannock with raisins or no raisins. And we have that same thing about Indian donuts with raisins or no raisins. And I hear Oli Boland's the same thing. We even learned how to argue about stuff like that from you. But that's what I would do. I'd go and I'd yell, New Year with all my siblings and cousins. We'd go house to house before noon. Now, we took away the bad luck stuff and we took away the shaming stuff. We didn't do that. We just had to do it before noon. That's all. There was no penalty, nothing afternoon or anything. Just you did do it before noon. And we'd say, yell, New Year, New Year. And they would come out with Indian donuts, Indian cookies, other baked goods, maybe apples or oranges, and sometimes Christmas candies, because it was just right after Christmas. And we did that. And you know where they do that at Six Nations? At the traditional end that are non-Christian. And I sent that post to Mike. And then Mike emailed me back about it. And I don't know whether you want to say anything, but it helped him understand something about his own tradition. And then he was talking to was it your mother, about the meaning of all of this? Could you, you can say it right.
So the picture of these little Dutch kids and these little Haudenosaunee kids running between house to house reminds me of something I learned in church basements as a kid. It's the word hazelach. Hazelach means cozy and hospitality and community, right? So I thought those donuts running from house to house, that's hazelach. That's beautiful. That's community being together in a good way. So I asked my mother, what are your stories about hazelach? She told all the stories we know. And then I told her the story of the New Year donuts, and she was floored. She didn't know about that cultural root. And to learn it from my Haudenosaunee brother, to learn something of my own roots and identity was just profound. So I asked my mother at the same time, what is the spiritual significance of hazelachite? She said, I think it means shalom. Receiving shalom from a peacemaker is an extraordinary gift. And that's polishing the chain, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is why I'm here.